Just stop defending Joel. Today, I'm gonna break down once and for all one of the most controversial moral dilemmas in video games history.
Swear to me that everything that you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
To be honest, at first, I was leaning toward this side myself, armed with iron logic. The life of one person versus the lives of millions of future generations, that's a trade-off that seems clear, especially when it's about saving entire generations. From a mathematical standpoint, the choice is obvious. Ellie should be sacrificed to create the vaccine. If you look closer, this approach treats the situation like a classic trolley problem. A trolley is speeding toward 5 people, but you can switch the track to kill only 1. Most people would agree that saving 5 at the cost of 1 life is the right, reasonable choice. But is it humane? In Ellie's case, the scale is even greater. We're not talking about 5 people. We're talking potentially all of humanity. The vaccine could have ended the apocalypse, restored civilization, saved countless lives. It would be the great hope in the nightmare people faced after the cordyceps outbreak. Moreover, Ellie herself, judging by her words and actions, was ready to sacrifice her life. She carried guilt over the deaths of close friends and felt she had to atone for her immunity by saving others. She genuinely wanted to help people and heal humanity from cordyceps, but it wasn't that simple at all. What if I told you that this approach is based on some pretty questionable assumptions? Let's look at the situation through the eyes of those who stood up for Joel and supported his decision. The main problem with the Firefly's position is that it takes promises for facts. But let's ask a reasonable question. What do we really know about the doctor who's gonna operate on Ellie? Is this someone ready to kill the only immune person without any prior research? Okay, in real medicine, there would be criminal negligence. Any rational scientist would first take blood and tissue samples, run multiple tests. Any other decision, even theoretically, couldn't be considered reasonable. Instead, the doctor from the Fireflies claims the immunity is deep in the brain, and so Ellie must be killed immediately to harvest material for research. Needless to say, this is not science, it's a malpractice dressed in scientific jargon. The Last of Us is not a fantasy where magic rituals work just because the script says so. It's post-apocalyptic realism governed by the laws of real biology and medicine, and that can't be forgotten. Ellie must remain alive in order to continue to do tests and verify the theories of doctors. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Even assuming the vaccine could be created, where do the Fireflies get the manufacturing capacity for mass production? How they distribute the vaccine? They have no control over territory and no infrastructure. Even if the vaccine were developed, it would just become a new tool for political control. The Fireflies would demand loyalty in exchange for vaccinations, leading to more conflict. Alright, but even putting aside questions about scientific validity, there remains the core ethical problem. Did Joel have the right to make the choice he made? Here, we face a conflict between two ethical systems. The first one says, maximize overall good, even if it harms some individuals. And the second one is saying that some actions are inherently wrong, regardless of the consequences. Joel acts according to the second system. For him, killing an innocent child is wrong, even if it would save millions. He refuses to see Ellie as a means to an end. To him, she is valuable in herself. But there's another key aspect, the question of consent. Neither the Fireflies nor Joel gave Ellie the chance to make an informed choice. She was sedated and taken to surgery without being told any consequences. Yes, they told Joel, but they clearly didn't want to tell him everything. One might argue a 14-year-old can make life and death decisions, but then who has the right to decide for her? The Fireflies, who barely knew her for a few months and were willing to kill her for a mere possible hypothetical greater good? Or Joel, who almost became her father and was ready to give his life for hers? I also think it's completely wrong to ignore Joel's personal history. He lost his daughter and lived with that trauma for 20 years. And Ellie gave him a chance to be a father again and feel human again as well. From a psychological standpoint, you cannot expect a parent to coldly hand over their child to death for abstract good. A parent is more likely to sacrifice themselves than allow that to happen. This goes against the basic instinct to protect offspring. So you could say Joel acted the way he did simply because he couldn't do otherwise. But what does Ellie herself think? Let's see from Ellie's eyes. In Last of Us Part 2, she discovers the truth about what happened at the Firefly's hospital. She feels betrayed, not just because Joel lied to her, but because he took away her chance to save the people who died due to the lack of a cure. And I think that feeling is completely natural. I feel the same pressure and guilt, especially if the lives of people I cared about depended on it. Ellie also suffers from so-called survivor's guilt. She witnessed the deaths of friends and loved ones and is tormented by the question, why did she survive when others didn't? The opportunity to sacrifice herself to save humanity could have freed her from that guilt and given her a sense of pride in her choice. From her perspective, Joel stole her chance at redemption.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
Her life lost the meaning she had invested in it, but she also blames herself for those deaths that might have been prevented if people had the cure for cordyceps. This is yet another piece of the puzzle that lets us see the full picture of this moral dilemma. Even good intentions can hurt those we're trying to protect. So, who's really right in this story? Maybe the question itself is wrong. Let's be real, the true value of The Last of Us finale wasn't to give a clear answer to the moral dilemma, but to show the complexity of real ethical choices that the characters face. In life, we rarely encounter situations with a single correct answer. More often, we must choose between different values, each important and justified. Joel chooses love for a dear person, practically a daughter, over the abstract good of humanity. Is it possible to say that one value is more important than the other? Love and care for loved ones. That's what makes us human. But care for the common good is also a fundamental human value. Perhaps the real tragedy is that Joel and Ellie were never given the chance to discuss the choice. The Fireflies imposed their decision without regard for those directly affected, so Joel answered force with force. If there had been an open conversation, if Ellie had time to think and make an informed choice, maybe things would have turned out differently. But it didn't happen, so each character acted based on their values and beliefs. Yes, purely from a cold calculation and the approach of saving more people at the cost of one life, Joel made the wrong choice. But from a human perspective, he acted as most people would in his situation, and honestly, I would have done the same. I'm not saying Joel is a saint or a villain. He's an ordinary man put in an extreme situation. His choice can be understood and even predicted considering his daughter Sarah's death early in the outbreak and how he saw his lost daughter in Ellie. At first, I myself thought Joel was wrong, but now years later, I've come to the exact opposite view. At the same time, it's not fair to say the Fireflies are absolute villains. They sincerely believed they were doing the right thing and saving humanity, but at what cost? The absolute readiness to kill a child without thorough research, knowing she's the only person on the planet immune to cordyceps. That's idiocy, not a moral question, and in my view, the main flaw of the Firefly's position. Ellie herself said she wanted to sacrifice her life to save others, but in this reality, her sacrifice would have been utterly pointless. Yes, in the second game, we see that Abby's father was the only person who might have had a chance to develop a vaccine, but admit it, that hardly sounds like a plan that would have worked now. Ultimately, Neil Druckmann showed us that moral dilemmas often have no clear right answers, especially when life and death are involved. Sometimes we choose not between good and evil, but between different types and degrees of it, and by sparking such a fierce debate, The Last of Us nails its purpose perfectly.
If I ever were to lose you, surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I'm not found by myself.
Maybe the most important lesson from this story is that there are no simple answers to complex questions. And the fact that we still debate this choice so many years later only confirms the importance of this stake. So what do you think? Was Joel right to save Ellie? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to hear your take. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time.